passport application fees within Nigeria are set to significantly increase with a 32-page 5-year validity that's been raised from 50,000 naira to 100,000 naira. Then the 64-page 10-year validity from 100,000 to 200,000 naira. This marks the second major hike within a year. The prior increase occurred in August 2024. That was from 35,000 to about 50,000 naira. And then for the 10-year, about 70K to 100,000 naira. The government justifies the rise as necessary for sustaining passport quality, speedy delivery, and curbing corruption via a centralized personalization system. Also, the new $80 prepaid customs duty on all U.S.-bound postal shipments from Nigeria, that's already raising questions right now about its broader economic impact. Well, let's unpack all of this now with Dr. Paul Alaje, Chief Economist, SPM Professionals, joining me from our Abuja studio. Great to have you on the show, sir, and Happy New Month.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me. Happy New Month.
Yeah, so
thank you so much.
I guess the new month is coming with, some price changes, for some major services. And, let's kick off with the passport fee hike. At a time when inflation is still biting, minimum wage, that's at 70,000 naira, and we have some states, increasing that at this time. How do you assess the impact of doubling passport fees on average Nigerians and household budgets? Does this mean reduction in japa rate?
Okay, thank you once again. I've looked at the issue carefully, talking about the issue of the cost of international passport to Nigeria in Nigeria. Recall that we also have Nigeria in diaspora that may want to get this passport for themselves. For Nigeria in Nigeria before now, it used to be 50,000 for 5 years and it's 100,000 for 10 years. But for Nigeria in diaspora, it has remained $150 for having access to the same. The question is, why the change for those in Nigeria and it did not affect those abroad? Now, my careful study revealed that we are discussing international passports. So when we discuss international passports, and from my presentation on GDP, I've warned that nations should not use their local currency, except they're having local conversation and they are presenting to themselves, then they can use local currency. But when it comes to international comparison, which of course a country must be compared to the rest of the world, then it's important for us to look at what the international costing is or what international pricing is. The first thing is, these passports, what was it before? I think during when President Jonathan was in office, it was about $47 to one passport because we are talking international passports. As of that time, exchange rate was around 150 to 200. I think President Jonathan left when it was 199, but it was around 150 for most part of his administration. Now, when you look at what exchange rate was, around 2022, 2023, exchange rate was around 400. Today, exchange rate is about 1,600. That policy of devaluation will certainly have impact on what we will pay for international passport. Perhaps that's one of the major components, because if you look at it, what the exchange rate was and what is exchange rate is now, and we want to procure international passport from outside Nigeria, honestly and sincerely, the price will most likely be different. Now, the question is, what should the price be? If it was $45, $47 and is now, if you ask me, when I did the conversion of 100,000 naira, it gave me around $63, $64 to 100,000 naira. And I looked at it very carefully. How did government arrive at this figure, or why is government charging? One would expect that even if there should be an increase, the increase should be around maybe 80 or 85,000 naira. Why are they getting it up to this? So I tried to also study the cost component of what makes up a passport, an international passport. And some of the things that make up an international passport, sadly, Nigeria as a country, we don't produce any of them in Nigeria. And Mr. Ladi, to shock you, we also don't have it in the entire West Africa. And in the entire Africa. Most of these passports that we use with our 1 billion population size, 1.2 billion, they are imported to Africa territory. So what you see is perhaps the impact of importation of all components of international passports. So the option will be either we subsidize to bring the price back to what it was. If we check what the rate was at about 75 or 89, but we are not going to subsidize the price of 100 or 106 is what the number is returning. So if you look at 106, my argument will now be, does this still mean that we are going to be having delays? I was in Frankfurt a number of years back with an Indian, and at the entry point, the border official, that's the immigration officer, allowed my subordinate, an Indian, to pass and delayed me as a Nigerian not to pass. And I saw the drama, so I was bold enough to ask one of them the question, why am I being delayed? We are traveling. Why is he allowed and I'm not allowed? Is it because he's not black and I'm black? He said, no. So one of them told me that my passport is not the same passport with it. I said, obviously. He said, it's not because of the country, but the production. Nigerian passport, most of the passports we have here, they are laminates. They are laminates, and from the word laminated. But what is globally accepted? What is so that you can, anywhere you find yourself. For mine, they said some features were not in the passport. But I got this passport from immigration in Abuja, in Nigeria. Why should some features? They said because of the kind of passport Nigeria uses. So if the Ministry of Interior, which they are saying they are going to do, is going to upgrade this passport into the globally accepted one, then I think it might be good instead of the delays and sees, because they don't know. Some of us, we have to prove yourself beyond reasonable doubt at the point of entry. So if that is what they want to do, then I will personally be in for it. But if the price is just a hike without bringing Nigeria to, helping Nigeria to have a solid passport that can compete with the rest, because that's our major travel document, if you ask me, then I can tell you that I may not be for it. But from the document, from the publication and what immigration have said, and Ministry of Interior have said, I think it will be a good one for me.
Right. Definitely, I'm going to be looking out for the new features at this point to justify, that price hike. But, there's also that side of, revenue generation. We know the government's trying to raise cash at this point. Do you think this is all about revenue generation or legitimate, cost pressures, in the passport system? How are you seeing that?
For me, international application should that Nigeria has some revenue concerns. But when you look at it locally, you see that our revenue concern might not be as they presented it. Our revenue challenges lies before subsidy was removed. Number two, before Naira was devalued. So right now, I think, to my mind, I'm not speaking for what's it called now, Ministry of Interior, the subsidy they might be paying, I'm not sure whether they do or not, because the way it is, the cost and what is obtainable from today is a match. So maybe before now, there was some amount of subsidy that was going on that government is removing hands from. That may be the situation, which is what I am suspecting. But other than that, if it's just for revenue, because there is a body called ICAO, and ICAO is that body responsible for most of the time for KPI, which is where most of the data, the passport data, international passport data are warehoused, for most part of the world. So that organization has a fee. So before now, to my mind, maybe government, maybe not, have subsidized for Nigeria or not, I'm not sure. But the point here is that if we are looking at the costs as of today, the cost matches with the amount that government tends to want to charge for the new international passport, which of course I think is obtainable from today. But if that is not the case, especially my emphasis is moving Nigeria from the laminates that we wear to carbonates, ones that are polycarbonate, such that all features, everything will be there. Some persons' chips are not properly read. You can't read the chips. In fact, if you are filling some form for some meetings abroad and you are asked to put the back of your passport on your phone, for most passports it works, for some passports it does not work. If this is what Nigeria is working on, or and we are bringing on board, then I think it will be a very good one for Nigeria so that we can compete with the rest of the world. And I've also checked what some parts of the world are charging in terms of pricing. For most developed countries and some middle-income countries that, of course, have adopted this type of technology on their passports, their rates are above $60. We have some charging as high as $250. We have some charging as high as $100. We have some charging as high as $70. Some are also charging $63, $60 as Nigeria wants to start. But we also have some less developing countries that are charging even much lower than Nigeria. But there are some African countries, to me, that they are outlier, like South Sudan and Sudan. Their rates are even as much as $100, in some cases $200, from what I have found out that their rates are. So to my mind, I think it's important for us to note that if we are talking of improved quality of international passports, and that the delays in getting international passports will be eroded. I recall that I mentioned that this rate, for my findings, is just for Nigerians in Nigeria. Nigeria outside Nigeria have been $150. Why was that not increased, to my mind? Maybe because that is already dollar denominated. But in Nigeria, because of exchange rate disparity from 450 to about 1,500 to 1,600, we might be having this kind of challenges. So that is clear. If we want to bring the price down, honestly, I am totally in support of bringing the price even lower than 50. But something must come first. Our exchange rate must improve. Recall that I've had several conversations with you on exchange rate, the impact of exchange rate devaluation on our local currency and the cost of many things, some of which is perhaps what you feel now. Apart from that, even some costs internationally has also increased. So I want to be fair and I want to be balanced in making this presentation so that I give comprehensive information that I have based on what is obtainable around the world today.
Right. I guess, at this point, consumers just have to absorb whatever is giving. I don't know how much the average consumer can keep taking, when it comes to most of these price hikes. But is there a risk, that by making passports more expensive officially, Nigerians may turn to, informal or, corrupt channels, undermining the government's anti-corruption objectives? Is there a risk there?
Well, I think you are very right there. If the costs keep going up, it will certainly have impact on Nigerians. My advice for Nigeria, especially people that I speak for most of the time, which is the poor Nigerians that wants to travel, especially within West Africa, I think they should sort for West African card instead of sorting for an international passport. Because when you are looking at travel within West Africa, it's better to just get a West African card, which is cheap, especially for Nigerians that are doing trade activity between, say, Kano and the Niger Republic, or within Nigeria and Gabon, Lagos and Benin Republic. It's better to just get a West African card instead of getting an international passport, which might be pricey for now, because people's business must continue. But for those who really wants to fly, and I said that because most of these people wants to go by road to travel from one point to the other. And if you go to the northern part of Nigeria, you see that frequency of travel between Nigeria and especially if you leave Katsina, you are more or less in a matter of hours in another country. So why should people who perhaps don't have sufficient funds go and procure 100,000, a form of withdrawal from their money? I think the alternative that seems to be there is to have an ECOWAS travel card, which is far cheaper than the international passport. If our exchange rate improves, the truth is that you might not see this money in dollar. You might see it in naira. In the real sense, it is dollar denominated. And that is why I say countries, except and unless, which is also my advice, if government can start producing this locally, then you can now see some naira indices or some naira components, cost components in having international passport. So, but for those who wants to travel, perhaps abroad, or they are traveling to do some other things, and I can tell you that it might be important for us to see what is going on now, because our economy has moved from the one that there is subsidy to one that perhaps you have to pay for almost everything. And if that is the economy we have, it's important that we have comprehensive information as to how that works. The question now is, how does it work? If you must look at the costs, internationally, and see what it means for us. So if somebody is traveling to the UK, he has to deal with getting a visa. And after that, you have to deal with getting a ticket, which of course is over $1 million. Then you now have to deal with getting a passport. That will even come first. And your passport now in Nigeria will be approximately $1 or $1.20 a month. So if you put that together for 5 years, it will give you an approximate $63 or $64, or in naira terms, 100,000 naira. So that is the reality, and that is what the number is saying this moment today.
All right, definitely before you can travel, you have to, trying to sort out tickets. You still have to pay for an increased passport fee. But let's pivot to another one now. The suspension of de minimis exemptions there. The $80 duty flat rate applied to all non-documents, even when the package value is significantly less. If you're sending out that package to the US, you have to pay that $80. You've suspended that minimum rule there for export. So quickly talk to me about this one. I guess this is originating from the US.
Well, I must say that when you look at the minimums, for some countries, especially advanced countries, they have it for commodities or items that are very low. In fact, some of them are not fully documented, because when you look at the amount for such imports, in some cases you have $100, you have $80. In some cases, you have them as $50. So removing it in Nigeria will certainly have impact, because it's going to increase, that means taxes will be applicable on them. It's also going to increase the cost with which the Nigerians are going to be procuring or buying those items. The implication is that depending on the type of good, if it's a commodity that can be transferred, the cost can be transferred to the final consumer, then that certainly will have implication on our cost component. My advice is that if truly we want to find a way to protect the poor, because if you say, international passport procurement is not for the poor of the poor, those who are living below $2 a day, or those who are exactly on poverty line, or those who are exactly on minimum wage level of maybe 70,000, that they cannot afford it, because they don't even have money to travel or to go via a ticket, and that is why we make the policy. One we want to understand. But to now increase commodity that they import, especially when we know that such commodity may not be readily available in Nigeria, I think that may require a review. What that means to me will be that if the commodity can be transferred to if the tax burden can be transferred to the final consumer, then it might be a bit tougher for people to buy. And when it is tougher, that means that it will have implication on people's spending capacity. It will also have implication on people's disposable income, what is left after such purchase. And finally, it will have implication on inflation. And when you read the National Bureau of Statistics, not less than 70% of all our finished product, and I'm just being charitable, in the real sense, not less than 80% of all finished product are imported into Nigeria. So if you are importing finished product, and most of these products are not capital goods. For capital goods, they have nothing to do with the municipal policy. Now, what they have to do is small items that people are bringing into Nigeria, and they might not be as huge, but they are significant enough for us not to ignore them. If we are doing this, then I will see it as purely as revenue drive, which I don't think should be our major or immediate concern, just as we mentioned earlier when we were having the earlier conversation.
All right, so much to unpack there. And definitely, I hope that this September we get less price hikes and maybe more income hikes, hopefully. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul Alaje, Chief Economist, SPM Professionals. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.